883, and that's from the Coast Life Support District. The class schedule is Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., plus 3 Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., October 23rd, November 20th, and December 11th, and September 14th through December 11th for the whole range of the class. 93 classroom hours total, and that's for emergency medical responder course by the CLSD. Coming up Thursday, again, is the free pet vaccine clinic at Stewart's Point by Spirit Veterinary Services. That's every Thursday, 8:30 to 12:30 p.m. at the southeast corner of Skaggs Springs Road and Highway 1. It's an indoor facility, more secure for cats. No appointment is necessary. First come, first served basis. And the Sea Ranch Thespians have a new play that is coming up this month, September the 16th through the 19th and the 23rd through the 26th at 4 p.m. It is free admission. It is Other Desert Cities. And the director is Katie Atherton, and sponsors are Carol Emery and the Wingate Foundation. And again, the performances are September the 16th through the 19th and the 23rd through the 26th, so 2 weekends in a row at 4 p.m. But because of limited seating, reservations are necessary. You can go to their website at searanchthespians.com or call 785-2548. That's 785-2548, and that's in the beautiful Nip Stingle barn, the white barn on the Sea Ranch, and parking cards will be provided at the entrance. It is also Coastal Seniors Monthly Lunch continues, free meals to go Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in the Point Arena Veterans Building from 11:30 to 12:30. Just call 4 p.m. the day prior to order a meal or schedule delivery. And delivery is for seniors and disabled adults only. Their telephone number is 707-882-2137. And a real important event that we want to announce again, coming up, the 3rd annual Ocean Life Symposium. Scott and Tree Mercer of Mendonoma Whale and Seal Study have lined up a whole week, Peggy. I mean, of about 3 hours each day of speakers from around the country.
9 to 12?
9 to 12 every day.
All right.
Monday through Friday, October 25th through the 29th. That's the Ocean Life Symposium brought to you by Mendonoma Whale and Seal Study. And that will do it for the announcements, Peggy.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful fall coming up. And, I want you to show people that Ocean Life Symposium on the camera.
Oh, right. We are live YouTube, everyone. So you can watch us as well as listen to us on 88.3 FM as well as kgua.org. This is the Ocean Life Symposium logo there.
Second year in a row.
Third
year in a row here at KGUA.
Second here at KGUA.
Yeah. That's what I thought. All right. So we are going to get right into it with our special guest today, Milo Shammas. Now, many of you have been wondering about the fate of the old Antonio's restaurant and the Gualala Hotel. And the Gualala Hotel has been bought and sold several times over the past several years, and it's been hard for anybody to make a go out of it. Well, we have found out that Milo, I hope I didn't say anything wrong there, that Milo is the new owner of these two wonderful businesses. So good morning, Milo. Hello?
Can you hear us?
He's muted somewhere, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, we're going to unmute you. Hang on.
And we really miss Jim Peterson and Cheryl McKenna, who were the last owners of the hotel. And they are the ones that got us in touch with Milo. And I think you're still muted. I see you still muted, Milo. If you could just unmute there on your end. There you are.
Is that better?
There you go. Now
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Great.
Right.
Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. Well, Milo, we were.
Thank you for having me, ladies.
Pardon? Oh, we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
He said, thank you for having me. We keep crossing each other.
Well, we'll just we'll work on this. But Milo, as you can imagine, people in our community are very interested in what's going on, and we're going to talk about that. But first, we're wondering if you could give us a little bit of information on your background, where you grew up, and we'll go from there.
I grew up in Los Angeles, and moved away from Los Angeles in 2005 to be with my now wife in Vacaville, California. I'm not sure if you guys know where Vacaville's at, but
Oh, I
that's
do, the
our
Bay Area
primary
people.
residence. And I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm from the Bay Area.
Are you okay? There's a little bit of a delay, so I apologize if I'm talking over you. But basically, yes, I made the move up to central or northern California. I mean, I think everybody in Los Angeles considers the Bay Area Northern California when it's truly more like a central California location.
That's what Peggy always said.
But yeah, I mean, does she? Yeah, she's right. I think I mean, geographically, the 1,000 or 1,200 miles, and you're kind of halfway there. So that's technically accurate, I think. Just about my background. I grew up in Los Angeles. I'm a plant biologist. I'm a business person, and studied business law as well. Have a passion for theatrical arts. I studied that for a long period of time before I made the move up here. And I got to work in Hollywood, both behind the camera and in front of the camera, with some very, very special people that helped to kind of define my personality and my drive in life. And, people like John Voight and Wilford Brimley and Kay Ballard and folks like that. I worked with them very closely for years, and so I mean, it was a lot of fun doing that. Little did I know that 7 years of theatrical art studies really were not going to take me to stardom as I thought it would when I was a young boy. But it actually ended up being a great lesson. And it's strange how life kind of works, because it just made me much more comfortable in front of the camera and a better chief executive officer. Big part of my job is to give public speaking. So I give lectures all over the country on organic gardening and biodynamic gardening and farming and things of the environmental concerns, things of that nature. And I heard Peggy, I believe, say something about climate change and the sun earlier. And so, I mean, that's a huge passion of mine, addressing those concerns. And that's really the field that's my normal day job, is, environmental concerns. What I do for a living is I own several factories throughout the United States, and we manufacture products like plant nutrients, soils, biological soil inoculants like probiotics for the soil. That was actually my invention. I was the first one to invent probiotic soils and fertilizers in 1990, and that has changed the entire industry on a global basis. Everybody is using probiotics, and well, you have to if you're using organics now. But that was my invention and the disruptive idea that allowed me to enter a very crowded space at that time with a product line. So these are true passions of mine. The environment, obviously, plant biologist, so I love plants. I love the soil. My concerns are healthy soil, which translate to healthy plants, then translate to healthy pets, both domestic and the kind we consume. And that also then directly translates to human health, which ultimately, on a much more holistic level, translates to environmental health. And that's something I'm very passionate about. So that's my background, and all of this is happening in Los Angeles. And until I met my beautiful wife Patricia in 2001 at a trade show in Las Vegas, believe it or not. And yeah, I know it's a great story. You guys want a story? I'm going to give you a story. And there is, love at first sight. I never believed that can actually happen, but it happened to us. And she owned a nursery at the time, a retail nursery. She owned several of them, but she was looking to carry our product line. And I used to work very closely with the Kellogg's company. They had an exclusive on our product line back in those days. And she came into the booth looking to buy our products. And I'm very proud to say I sold her the product line and I sold her myself at the same time. And that was the transition of moving to Vacaville. I'd really never even heard of Vacaville, quite honestly. I studied Latin and Greek for educational purposes, and I know what vaca means and I know what ville means, but I'd never heard of the two put together. So when she told me I'm from Vacaville, I thought, Vacaville, God, it sounds like Cowtown to me. So and this is a guy from Los Angeles.
Sure.
Thinking, this should be really interesting. I mean, a guy from Los Angeles hooking up with a girl from Cowtown. Well, let's try it. You know, love can take you to many different places, and it usually leads to the right place. So moved up to Vacaville, and that was my first introduction to true large-scale agriculture in 2005. I bought a beautiful ranch in Winters. I'm sure Peggy, you know where that's at.
Here.
Lee. So I bought a beautiful ranch, that Walnut Ranch, 45 acres, right on Pewter Creek itself. And so the water used to run right on the very edge of the property. It was just a beautiful, beautiful, stunning property. So I farmed organic walnuts for about 5 years, and I've just been in this area ever since. And we have a lot of agricultural real estate. Both my wife and I, some businesses around town. And when the LNU fires broke, I want to say, what is it? It's been almost 14, 15 months. Does that sound about right?
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we were the Vacaville was just a mess, and it was just really just a mess. It was just a terrible place to be at that time. It was very hot, and the fires had been burning for an extended period at that point. And so it was just very ominous. The sun was just like Mars. I mean, literally, it was just, and I'm sure you guys have witnessed that many times.
We remember that.
It was very scary, you guys. It really was. Yeah. We live in town, but in town, but we live on the very edge of town. So our backyard has 300 acres that are put in a conservation easement, so no one can develop, the area around us. But there's two, the sword is sharp on both sides, so it really all depends on how you want to look at it. It's beautiful in the sense that our backyard is just this open, beautiful place where nobody can develop houses around us, and we've got beautiful views of Sacramento Valley and all of that. But at the same time, when you have a natural disaster like a wildfire, it becomes, the sword can turn on you very quickly, and it became a very perilous place for us. So we got a knock on the door at 3 a.m. and the firemen were there and said, well, you have to leave right now. And I thought, well, we're in a gated community. I mean, there's pavement all around us. What's going to happen here? I never really considered that, we would be in a situation like that. So, reality kind of struck. We have two dogs, love of our lives, the Golden Doodle and the Labradoodle. And I always I really pride myself on not owning anything that I can't just walk away from. Material value has very little value to me. So I was able to grab everything of any relevance to me, which is my computer that holds all of my company data, just important stuff, my laptop, and my phone and my passport, and my briefcase, and put my dogs in the car. And my wife was in the car before us all. She was, she was making sure we're all safe, and she had the car nice and ready for us. And we just left everything, just left the house. But it was at that moment that I realized that, it's a beautiful place to live, but it's also, it can turn on you very quickly. And then as this is all happening, guys, one of our ranches goes up in flames, which is about, 2 miles from our primary home. And it's a beautiful ranch. This is a place where we used to do community events. I would do fundraisers there. I do a lot of fundraising for the City of Hope, Wounded Warriors. I've donated, my wife and I have donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to causes like that we believe in. And so we used to do fundraisers there. People would give. It's a beautiful event center with a creek running behind it. So anyways, and a huge couple of buildings and stuff like that. Everything just went up, just torched. And so we spent the day here at the office, and we finally made it home, I believe, around midnight. The firemen were kind of letting people go back, and it was just kind of an idea. I just couldn't breathe, just had a headache for 3 or 4 days of being in the fires. Air conditioning can't filter out the particulates. So I suggested to my wife that why don't we go find a pet-friendly place on the coast? The only thing I could think of was cold, fresh air, and it was priceless to me at that point of being in the middle of these fires for 2 weeks. So I found the Timber Cove Lodge. They're pet friendly.
Sure.
So I thought this is great, right? This is great, perfect. So we went up there and we spent 4 days hoping that the fires would be under control, which they weren't. We came back and lasted 2 days here. Then I found an Airbnb place between Timber Cove and Gualala, and we spent a week up there. And I thought, gosh, living up here is just phenomenal. The temperature was great, it was foggy, air was clean. And, I'm just one of these guys, I can't help myself. My wife and I are, very blessed. We travel because of my business. We travel all over the world. And I'll get into that in a bit about the hotel and restaurant, but we travel all over the world and, get to eat at the best restaurants, hotels and stuff like that. And one of the things I always do is grab a real estate brochure to figure out what's going on in the community. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just going to stop you for now. You've put a whole lot of, given us a whole lot of information. And of course, we understand why you came here. And, with the fires in Tahoe now and everywhere, the Sierras, we're seeing so many people who experienced the fires that you went through, going through so much PTSD right now. And, I imagine, obviously that's all coming back to you. While we were here on the coast and we, woke up that morning and a friend of ours said she was leaving Santa Rosa and coming out to the coast. And my partner's a land surveyor, took off for work at 6:30 in the morning and immediately came back because there were so many people on refugees from at Bodega Bay and other areas south, just living on the beaches in their cars. And for those several weeks, our town in particular welcomed a lot of refugees and stepped up to the cause there. And we love living out here too on the coast, but we also know that this is it. If a fire comes here, we've got nowhere to go but on the ocean. Go to the beach, get in the boats or something. So like you said, that sword it goes both ways. But I want to get back to the really more.
And we have a ranch too, where the fire in 2017, October, came over our ranch, and it took 3 different fire engines in a water tank to save our main home. And then it went all the way down to our vineyards, and it was pretty devastating for us. And we had to replace some of the forests thanks to the USDA help. But I do want to let our listeners know that if you've just tuned in, you're listening to Peggy's Place. I'm Leanne Lindsay. This is Peggy Berryhill. And we have Milo Shammas with us, the new owner of the Gualala Hotel and the old Bones Roadhouse, as some of us still call it, on the north end of town. And we welcome him to the show. And we've been hearing a lot about things that a lot of us in this community have some connection to, whether it's paradise, friends who've lost homes over there, or other fires that have happened here in Northern California. This is a thread like the pandemic that kind of ties us all together too. We get it.
We do. And thank you for sharing all that. Although you grew up around Los Angeles, it sounds like, but having lived in Vacaville, and by the way, it's supposed to be 106 in today. That's phenomenal. It's a very, very high, even Vacaville. We're having a lot of trouble with the stream. I'm wondering.
Are you hearing the sounds that I am?
Yeah, a lot of digital stuff.
Digital feedback.
Would you mind dialing us back in?
No,
I-
No,
I-
that won't work because we're going to lose YouTube.
Oh,
Or we can stay on YouTube, but then we lose our audience there who's watching. So I think that maybe we just stick with it and let the digital effects happen.
well, as long as we can, yeah, well, let's see how it goes, Michael. So Michael, let's talk about where I was going with this is, now that you live, you've experienced being out here on the coast, things are changing all over the real estate world, and particularly in our part of the coast here, which has been predominantly, and we consider this area Mendonoma, as it's called, meaning Mendocino and Sonoma. And so the northern end of Sonoma tip is the Sea Ranch, and that community, and Timber Cove is there too. And then on this side of the river is Gualala and Point Arena, Manchester, and Elk. And that, that's primarily our area up here in our communities. So you've had the demographics here have started changing very quickly with the real estate market in the past, past couple of years. It's just gone crazy. And so what we're finding, not unlike other places in the rest of the world, we're not unique. And then you add the COVID in the past year, and people are struggling. The restaurants are struggling to stay open. Some of them are closing for 2 or 3 days at a time. Some can't find workers. So we're wondering, is this an odd time in some ways, it would seem, to do something like this amazing two ventures, the Gualala Hotel, which, as we said, that has had several people who come in and think that they can, turn it around, and doesn't quite work that way. And then the Antonio's Bones Roadhouse, as Leanne called it, which is a large location, beautiful views out of that, to sit there and look out at the ocean.
Right across
So,
from us in the
yeah.
Cypress Village.
So what are your thoughts about coming here, especially at this time? I mean, you couldn't find an almost more challenging time to come to a tiny community like this.
Yeah, I've never been one to shy away from challenge. I mean, I pride myself on seeing opportunity where others see failure. And it is a very challenging
Okay,
time.
sorry, Milo, can you move closer to your microphone? You're we've lost your level a little bit. So
How's that? Is
I
that
think
any
that's going to
better?
be a little bit better.
And
Yeah.
also, we heard from one of our listeners that they're hearing the digital effects on their end. So maybe it's in our studio. It could be.
Well, it's just something in the digital realm. So, but we definitely want to make sure that, Milo, you're being heard. So I'm sorry.
Yes.
Let's go back to why now. This is certainly a huge challenge, and but to come to a community now at this point that's struggling, honestly.
Well, I mean, as I was saying earlier, we've stumbled across Gualala because of the fires here and back. We bought a home in Gualala. So, I mean, we're not just people that came to town to buy a hotel and a restaurant and conduct business and go live someplace else. I mean, we live in Gualala. It's my home, and my wife and I intend on retiring there. So whatever choices we make and whatever we do will be contributory in nature to the community. And, one of the primary questions that
It's his
always
network.
receive
You're going in and out a little bit with it here. It could be our
is, well, why aren't you doing anything with the property? I mean, I don't know how else to change that, you guys. I'm right next to the I can see you clearly, and I can hear you
I
clearly.
think so are we talking to you in Gualala? Is that where you're talking to it today?
No, I'm speaking to you from Vacaville.
Frozen now.
It's frozen. Oh, okay.
Okay, all right. Well, all right. I think I somewhere anyway. We don't want to dwell on this, but we'll just keep doing this
Well,
gently. There's a little dance of there's some delay sometimes, but okay. So you were saying that you bought a home in Gualala, and we're really happy for that. And you want to also encompass the community, be part of the community. How are you guys doing that? What are your plans?
Well, for now, we're just enjoying, our time up there. And, like all the other residents, I mean, we're disappointed that there's no place to go and enjoy the community. We love Covazul, and, we feel Juan's pain every time he has to close down for some reason or another. And can you hear me okay, Leanne? You can? Okay, great. Um, so I mean, but that also influences our comfort level in making significant investments into the hotel slash restaurant and bar, and also Antonio's. One of the last thing I want to do, ladies, is establish something, get it up and running, and then have the CDC or the state, give us a new mandate that says, well, you have to close down. And that's very risky. So my wife and I have chosen, we've elected to not do anything at all, simply because we feel it's a more prudent approach to the ownership of these properties. Especially with the new Delta variant, nobody really knows where it's going. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys caught the tailwind of some of the news last night, but the rise is increasing very aggressively. I mean, the days are getting shorter. People are going to be driven indoors. Um, there's a lot of variables that I'm not comfortable with as a business person. As you guys know, I'm a chief executive officer we talked about that, of a large manufacturing company. And I love risk. I really do. I seek risk. I've built a reputation for myself over the years as a risk seeker. But that's calculated risk. There's a very big difference with risk that I can manage and I can look at and I can study and I can use my gut instinct to drive. But when you talk about, COVID-19, that's a risk that's too anomalous. It's in God's hands. I mean, that's risk I have no control over. So for that reason, and obviously the fires haven't really helped anybody, but that's neither here nor there. But in terms of the COVID part of it, and the CDC and different variants, and we're heading into a very risky fall and winter. We're not sure what's going to happen. I've seen what's happened to Juan and Covazul, how he's opened and closed and opened and closed. And it's, the only place in town that I can go to. And he does a great job. I love this place.
And Milo,
But I mean, I see his pain.
part of that I will say is that Juan has family, his father had some health issues, so they've had to close down because of that. And it's not related to COVID. So just wanted to just correct that one thing.
Yeah, no, that's recently, but I mean, just from what I observed over the last year,
Right.
just that
Right.
was COVID related.
Right.
So I mean, from that perspective, and my wife Patricia and I, we would visit. Sometimes, Covazul was open, sometimes it's closed, and um, so that creates a great uncertainty for making additional investments. Also, the labor force, as you know, is
Mhm.
thin to none in Gualala, and I've learned that very quickly. Just trying to get a contractor to do something around the house and is almost impossible. And that's great though. I'm really happy that the community is gainfully employed and everyone is happy doing what they want to do. But that poses an additional layer of uncertainty for us as business people, in the sense that, well, if we do bring people in and if we ask people to, retire from a job they currently have and then come and join us at the hotel and or restaurant, and then we have to close it down in 2 to 3 months, well, that really would not be fair to the community or anybody else for that matter. So we've just simply elected not to make any profit and just to endure the losses. We think it's much more ethical, and it's a much more, it's a moral issue for my wife and I. It's not really a monetary discussion. It's more of a moral discussion. So, for that reason, just simply because of the uncertainties and we don't know where things are going, we've simply elected to park it and just leave it alone. Now, I've had people tell me, well, are you doing a 1031 real estate exchange? No, I'm not. That has nothing to do with finances. This has everything to do with my wife and I retiring in Gualala and having something.
That, we really appreciate your
Give back
your openness and your honesty
to the community.
to
And
talk
then
about
make
these issues.
the quality of our lives better simultaneously. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity for you guys to have me on the air to talk about them. And they are very risky. It's just risky. And I've spoken to. I'm not sure if you know her. Her name is Rebecca. I do not recall her last name, but she
Rebecca
ran
Stewart.
the sea. Right, exactly. She ran the Sea Ranch Lodge for a while. And she and I mean, she's a wonderful lady, great chef. We hit it off, and we'd been in discussions for a long time, and we got it to a point to where about 5 or 6 months ago, we were going to begin to pencil some kind of an agreement in place, but then Delta popped up. That was like the birth of that, and I thought, oh man, this is just really risky. Rebecca, let's just kind of park everything, and let's just allow this year to pass and see where Dr. Fauci takes us. And I think that's a much more prudent thing to do.
She's my neighbor.
And that's really,
she's my
is she
neighbor.
really?
Yeah,
She's a
good
great,
friend.
and so you get a lot of great food, I'm guessing.
She's amazing. She
Yeah.
is absolutely fabulous.
And you might be interested to know that Dr. Fauci talked to us here at the radio station at about the beginning of the COVID in this year. This whole thing that has turned the world upside down, but in particular tiny communities like ours, when you talk also about staffing, there's also this real estate issue here. There's no homes anymore for the average family to live in. The real estate prices have gone so high, and some of the people who used to live here and work here had to leave because of the cost. So since it's clear you're thinking about all the parts and pieces of this risk that you are willing to take, although you're studying it for a while, where do you have any ideas for housing or helping with housing with people in the community so that you will have staff?
And by the way,
Oh, boy,
Rebecca,
you're speaking way above my pay grade now. I'm really.
Well, I just wanted to say that while we have digital delay here, that Rebecca Stewart did text in that she totally agrees with you. And so there are people here in this community that do understand what you need to do. And I hope that we can get you back.
I'm sorry.
I can't hear you, ladies. I'm not sure what's going on.
Oh no, I didn't mean to imply that it's up to you to solve the housing crisis, but we want to make sure that you have employees and that we have people in our community that can possibly work for you. Can you hear us again?
What if I switch
much
this
better
to-
now? Yeah.
Okay, you could try that.
Will it disconnect is what I'm wondering.
I don't think so. Let's try.
Okay, we're going to try different internet right now, folks. So hang with us so that while everything switches over, perhaps that will make a change.
And you are tuned to KGUA in Gualala, 88.3 FM, the old-fashioned radio way. You can also get us on the TuneIn app, Radio Garden, and our own Air Pocket app, which you can download at kgua.org and take us anywhere in the world. Well,
and we're talking with Milo Shammas, the new owner of the Gualala Hotel, and Antonio's, which we call Old Bones Roadhouse View. And Milo, thank you so much again for joining us. And now go ahead, Peggy. What was it that you were about to say?
Well, I was hoping that Milo can hear us now, and we are gonna, this is just all of the time we live in this digital time. Now we've got all this digital issues. So can you hear us?
I can.
No.
Nice and clear. Yes, whatever Leanne did, it worked.
Excellent. Excellent. That's why we call her our wing woman. Some people call her our Swiss Army knife of radio. So anyway, as I was saying, Milo, I wasn't implying that you have to solve all of these and you're going to build homes for everyone and but it's just the reality of some of the questions that people in our community are concerned about. Obviously, as I said earlier, our community is changing rapidly. The demographics are changing rapidly. And yet the core of our community has been working, a lot of working class people, a lot of working poor people. You know how that goes right now. So we're just wondering what are your plans for embracing the community and when do you think that you're going to open either the restaurant or the hotel? Are you going to open them up separately, or you try and open them up both at the same time? What are your thoughts?
Well, in a perfect world, I should have already been open. In a perfect world, I would have been open in spring. That's in a perfect world. And there's really no limitations. I mean, I didn't need to remodel anything, really. I mean, the Antonio's restaurant, he gave it to me fully furnished with a kitchen. I mean, all I had to do was just put an open sign on the door and I was ready for business. Same exact thing with the hotel, the Petersons, which, by the way, Leanne, I heard you say, compliment Jim and Cheryl. And Jim has become a very good friend of mine since I bought the hotel from him. And he and we stay in touch on a regular basis. They're remarkable people, just great, good quality people, which is one of the reasons why I didn't negotiate with him on the price. I felt he was being fair, and I paid him full price for the property. And Jim also gave me a hotel and the restaurants and the bar. He actually even left the liquor cabinet, fully stocked for me. There's 100 bottles of whiskey and vodka and stuff. He just gave it all. He said, "Milo, it's all yours." He did lock everything and said, "Here's the key." But I'm very integritous people, and so I mean, really, there was no limitations, you guys. I could have just simply taken the hotel. My wife had some ideas about doing a gift shop, and where the florist was the hotel. But even with all, even with as easy as it may seem from the outside to just simply say, "Hey, why don't you open up the place and let us have a drink or serve us a sandwich?" It's risky. And and Peggy, I think you're really touching upon the crux of the entire matter, which is labor force. If there are no workers, or if there are workers and then they become temporary workers, then you get into another type of situation where you make a huge effort to open up. I mean, can you imagine opening up the hotel and the restaurant? That's at least 50 people I would have to employ, which is exactly what I intend on doing. That's our goal, that we give everybody in the community that wants a job and is able to do that job and has the wherewithal to perform at my high level of standards, then I'm more than happy to employ them. But at the same time, it wouldn't be fair to employ those people and then shut the place down in a month or two. And you see the way things are going. There's so many irregularities, so many unpredictables, so many anomalies. And it just makes it, my appetite for that type of risk is really 0 to none. So back to your question, Peggy, when do I anticipate we'll open up the hotel and the restaurant? The answer really should be, at church. We should ask that question of God and say, well, when do you think this whole thing is going to go away? When is the 100-year pandemic going to go away? And then at that point, I'll have more clarity. So, I mean, that's a question I can't answer. And the reason why I was being slightly facetious about that is because I'm also involved with a lot of mergers and acquisitions banking. And a lot of the things, the big topic for us right now is COVID, pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID. And how do you create value across the whole COVID chain, the pre and the post? And are you in the middle of it now? I mean, that's the huge question we're asking ourselves. Are we in the middle of it, or are we coming out of it? And the answer is, well, back to church. Nobody really knows. So, and that creates a major dislocation in the valuation of companies, brands, businesses, real estate. There's a lot of things. I mean, I think you're seeing this hyper dislocation, Peggy, to where people are fleeing from the city and buying as much real estate as they can on the coast just to get a breath of fresh air until this pandemic cools down a bit. But I think that's going to, everything, gravity has a way of settling everything and finding balance again. And I think post-COVID, you're going to see what you're seeing. Obviously, I mean, this is your town, and I'm new here. But I think what you're seeing, the spike in demand for coastal homes, all up and down the coast, by the way, not just Gualala. I mean, I'm seeing this in San Diego as well, all the way up to the Oregon border. I mean, coastal communities have become very, very attractive to people. So but as we have more stability, as we have more control over COVID, and as we feel the comfort with the vaccines, I mean, as all of these dynamics converge and we have clarity and comfort, and workers willing to go back to work because they're not getting the federal stimulus. I mean, that's also a compounded factor as well. I was listening to a Bloomberg report last night, and basically they've lifted that stimulus package, but they did, and they said, well, 57% of the people that are no longer going to get the check are still even contemplating whether they want to go back to or not. So I mean, you've got this huge disconnect and huge dislocation between COVID, finances, employment, the willingness, the ability, and to work, and all of these dynamics converging simultaneously creates a very uncertain situation for everybody. I mean, we're not just talking about us in the hotel and the restaurant, but you can look at the people all around us in Gualala. I mean, the only people that are really doing phenomenally well are the supermarkets, because they're deemed as necessary, and you have to have food. But when you look at and the what?
And the realtors.
And the realtors are doing very well. Yes, I know my realtor loves me right now.
Well, let me go back to the COVID question again. In this sense, as an employer, and you mentioned the supermarkets, so I'm going to use them as an example. In the sense that for safety, requiring really people to wear masks and having belligerent customers come in, and how they're having to deal with that. And a lot of businesses here, are very concerned. And just Mendocino County has had a very stark rise in deaths and number of cases lately, this past couple of weeks. So we're also finding this whole social phenomenon happening, and I think it's happening again globally, not just here. But how does an employer deal with that when you have people who refuse to wear masks going to the grocery store, or refuse to wear masks at restaurants? On a weekend, in the good old days, and the best of worlds, we would have 24,000 people up here for a weekend in our little communities up and down the coast. That's a tremendous amount of people. And this Labor Day weekend, we still had, of course, quite a few. But there's that dynamic that's going on right now of people who are willing to wear masks and people and vaccinate. As an employer, how do you deal with that with with current employees or potential employees?
Well, I mean, I can answer that to my current employees. I employ, well over 100 people, and the way I deal with my employees is social distancing, of course. And let me just backtrack a bit, Peggy. I mean, at the very onset of COVID, we're deemed as an essential business, so we were able to remain open. But a lot of my office staff, and I didn't know the rules and regulations at the time. And as an employer, there's some, again, risk. There's some things I'm not willing to dabble in. I mean, I know that if you force people to come in, and I have 5 firms on retainer, so I mean, it wasn't hard for me to pick up the phone and speak with my primary counsel and say, well, what do how do I navigate this one? He said, listen, until there's a set manual of rules and regulations of what you should and shouldn't do, or can and can't do as an employer, he said the best course of action is to do nothing and just to simply follow whatever's on the news that week. If they want to go home, tell them they can go home. As long as they're working out of their, working on their computer and answering the phones, that was good enough for me. That's how I dealt with my office staff. Now, the factory labor staff, well, we still have to make stuff. I mean, we're a factory, so we have to, create things. We have to fabricate things. So the way I dealt with that is I simply made sure everybody was spaced, accordingly from each other. Everybody had to wear a mask. Everybody had to wear gloves. I shut the factory down in the sense that nobody from the outside was allowed to come in, and no more friends, no visitors, nothing like that. We would make products, and then when the trucks came, we would load the trucks up with the products, and they would leave. So I mean, I gave it as much control as I could, and thank goodness we withered it, and nobody in the entire company became ill from COVID. And that was, I believe, due to my very aggressive, diligent, precautionary measures. And that is a zero tolerance type of an approach. If somebody broke the rules and didn't have a mask on, I would write them up on the spot. 3 strikes, you're out, is the way I work. But that was good for the good of the company. That was for the good of all the other people. It's not fair for one person that has this thing in his mind that says, well, I'm special, I'm different, I don't need a vaccine, I don't need a mask, I don't need anything, it's my right. That you're right, that is your right. But it's also my right to not employ you because you're gonna make the rest of the company sick and their families sick. So that's just kind of the discipline that I have, is that if you enjoy working for me, great. Let's make sure that we respect everybody and their families. Because if you think about it, over 100 people, if they have wives, husbands, children, I mean, I could potentially have influenced several thousand people, made a lot of people ill, unless I took that very strict position in how I ran the factory here, and well, the multiple factories, but the way I ran my specific factory in Vacaville. Now let's fast forward to like, well, what would I do, or what would my wife and I do for the hotel and the restaurant and any other retail or service industry businesses that we choose to venture in? It's very different. You see, the manufacturing world is a very isolated world. It's a controlled environment. It's almost like a clean. I can control it. Whereas the service industry, you're almost like proactively volunteering to put yourself in harm's way. Do you remember the early days when the frontliners were deemed as the only heroes in the world because they were putting their life on the line? Well, I remember one time I walked into a Walmart and I thanked the lady. I mean, for the first time in my life, I just said thank you to the lady that just simply put my groceries in the bag. And because to me, she also represented a frontliner, and that she was taking risk to feed her family and put food on her table.
I did
And
that
that's
with
basically every time.
Mhm.
the
Yeah, I
UPS
mean, they're in the danger. Yeah, there you go. UPS drivers. Anybody in the service industry, I considered a hero. That was the way I looked at it. Not just the nurses, but everybody, the people that served you food, that put your food in a bag, gas station attendants, plumbers. I don't really care what you did. If you were in the service industry, you were my hero. because you kept America going. And that was very important to me. So, I mean, when we think about the hotel and the restaurants and bar, it's, you know, it's constant contact. You're in touch with people and you're breathing on people, and people are breathing on you from morning till night. I mean, you could potentially come into contact with hundreds of people per day, whereas, you know, with the factories, we're isolated. We're alone. There's no people coming in and out. There's social distancing between us. It's a very large property, you know, that I'm currently on here in Vacaville. We bought an Air Force missile silo site. So, I mean, we're on 160 acres and we have a lot of land and a lot of buildings. And so that it's a very safe property to be on. That's how I can manage the manufacturing side of the world. But to go forward and to manage something in the service industry is much more perilous, and it's risky, and I don't know how to control it. Is the most honest answer. You can put a lot of precautionary measures in, but that's not really what we want to do for the community. We don't want people leaving and saying, "Wow, this is the most inhospitable community I've ever been in." So, you know, from that perspective, I wouldn't know what to do, Peggy. That's really the answer. I mean, I think, and this whole distancing between tables, and you know, you need 50 people to run this, and waitresses or waiters aren't making, you know, anywhere near the kind of tips they should be making. So, you know, it's very risky. It's really just a very, very risky venture. So I've just decided, my wife and I both decided, that it's just better not to do anything until we have more visibility and our confidence level rises. And then we can make that investment, open up the businesses. Now, in terms of the, because I think this is a really important point too, guys, in terms of like the hotel itself. It's not up to hotel standards, current hotel standards. So, I mean, it's not like I can open up the hotel tomorrow morning because, well, you know, it's a very old hotel and the stairs are like this. It's almost like climbing a ladder. So, I mean, the hotel is probably not going to be anytime in the near horizon. That's probably going to be just curbed as something my wife and I will use when we have family and friends coming into town, or we're doing a, you know, a business hosting thing where there'll be friends and family staying up, and I do have a few friends staying up there now, and but that's what the hotel part of it will do now until we can do something much more realistic. However, though, the bar and the restaurant downstairs, and the, you know, the not the entertainment center, but the outdoor venue, you know, all of these things are viable, and I think they can create a lot of fun. And they can employ a lot of people in the community. And that's something that we're very motivated to do. But again, until we have further clarity as to where COVID may take us, we've just simply decided not to take that risk. And it's not just because we're concerned about investing a little bit of money and bringing people on and doing some kind of a marketing campaign to alert and people that we're open or create the awareness. That's really that's not relevant. What is highly relevant is that if we bring a lot of people on and this becomes their future and their livelihood, and we shut it down simply because it's something that's completely out of our control, not financial, but again, force majeure, the act of God, it would not be fair. So from that perspective, we're not opening because, to answer your question directly, Peggy, I wouldn't know how to manage that risk. And remember earlier we were talking about, are we in the middle of COVID still, or are we you know, in the exit hallway right now? We're nearing the, you know, the other side.
Yeah, you know,
my gut instinct is
go ahead. Just say what your gut instinct is, and I'm going to.
My gut instinct is my gut instinct is we're not done with it yet, which is the reason why my wife and I have chosen not to take any action. I'm sorry, go on, Dan.
Well, Dr. Fauci, as we all know, gets asked all the time, when is this going to end? Well, he can't answer that because it's complicated, as he says. And it also depends on how many people get vaccinated. and that will prevent other variants from coming up and arising. And it's an unknown right now. So you're taking the stance of minimizing risk, which I think we can all understand.
Mhm.
And I just in this last couple of minutes, Milo, I just wanted to ask you something about when you were a young boy and fishing with your father. If you could tell us a little bit about that experience. If you could hear me.
Gosh, Leanne, I thought I heard you say something about fishing with my father.
Yes, yes, I read something
You're
online.
breaking up a little bit, but
Okay. Well, Milo, when he was a young boy, spent time with his father on a fishing boat and would go out and they would work with the fish. And I wanted to hear more about that experience. Otherwise, if you can't, did you hear that part, Milo?
I did. Yes, I did. That was actually the beginning of my awareness of being a true naturalist and environmentalist. It was ironically after it was in the 4th grade. I remember this very clearly. My teacher's name was Mrs. Buchanan. She taught us the lessons of the Pilgrims and Indians, and this was in early spring. And basically, she taught us that how the Indians would not waste anything, and they taught the Pilgrims to take the fish carcass, intestines, head, and everything else, and bury it at the base of corn seeds. And that would, break down naturally and become fertilizer. And for some reason, I don't know why, that just really stuck in my head. And, ironically enough, that very Sunday, that was the only time my father would spend with me, was on Sundays, Sunday mornings for about 4 hours. He's a workaholic like I am. He works 7 days a week. He always has. My mother's the one that really raised us. But so on Sunday morning, he would take me to Santa Monica, and we'd do the half-day fishing boat. And I noticed the deckhands were, taking the fillet, putting them in a nice plastic bag, giving it to the fish. This is after the catch, and we're making our way back to the pier. And if you've ever been on a fishing boat, and I suspect you ladies have, the big wooden plank with the recirculating water, and everything gets, scraped back into the ocean. And you've got the gulls and the seals behind you with this trail of just, fish detritus, tracking the boat. And I don't know what it was, just again, an act of God. And I just looked at the deckhand and I said, "Hey, can you give me the fish parts, the fish waste?" And I'll never forget the guy's look. He looked at me like, I was 6.5 years old. He looked at me and thought, "God, what is this kid?" And he laughed. He really laughed. And this is back in the early 70s. And, this guy was, just salty dog, just a real salt dog. And he seemed like he was 100 years old to me. He might have been 19 or 20, but he had a red beard, long ponytail, the whole thing. And he was just amused by me. He said, "Sure, no problem, kid." And then he bagged up about maybe 100 pounds of fish intestines, heads, guts, and stuff. It was a commercial fishing boat. It was 100 people on the boat. And I happened to ask him after he filleted 2 fish. So he gave me he gave me everything, everybody's catch. So I brought that home to my mom and I said, "Hey, let's use it in the garden. I learned this from the Pilgrims, and a lesson in history class about the Pilgrims, and this will make the greatest organic garden ever." And she used it, and boy, did we have a harvest that year like you could never imagine. Tomatoes that were like 4 or 5 pounds, and so that was my first real love affair with understanding how the world really works. That, hey, this is not really a wasted material. This is a great material. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, Milo. That's going to bring us to the end. We've this hour has gone so quickly, and
Please come back.
Milo Shammas, he and his wife are the new owners of Antonio's and the hotel, taking their time, being cautious, but we want to, you to come and stay apprised with us. We appreciate your honesty and care and concern for your employees and all of your other businesses in this time of COVID. It's good to hear how employers, owners, business owners are looking at this, because clearly we're all in this together at some place. The COVID is here, and we've all got to work together. So reminding you that this was live on YouTube, listeners. It'll also be on SoundCloud. It'll repeat at 1:00 today. On Thursday, we're going to have journalist Michael Yaki here, and he's going to also be talking to us about the upcoming election, which many of you are concerned about. So thank you, Milo, very much. Appreciate you coming. That's going to do it for Peggy's
Thank you,
Place.
ladies.
Ann?
Thank you so much, Milo. And you are listening to KGUA in Gualala